In this video, I'm going to show you how to do the FOIL method. In the first video of the algebra series, we went over things that would greatly help you when doing this method, such as what are like terms, adding like terms, subtracting like terms, multiplying two negatives together, multiplying a negative and a positive together. How does this interact? How do all of these operations interact with each other? What properties do we need to know? So if you didn't watch that video, or if you're unfamiliar, just go back and watch it. All right, let's get into it. FOIL. What does FOIL mean? And what do I mean by the FOIL method? So let's just start off, not blue. Let's just start off with an example right away. Because I feel like if we get too hung up on the name FOIL and how it means first, outside, inside, last, it just hinders the learning process for this. Because at some point, this is going to become robotic for you. You're just going to be able to do this with a couple examples of practice. So let's get right into it. So the FOIL method refers to multiplying a binomial times another binomial. So I'm going to write out two binomials multiplied together. Right? Now, if you're confused on what is a binomial just refers to an expression, so something within brackets, right, or an equation, that has two terms. So this bracket has two terms, so we call that a binomial. This bracket also two terms, so we call it a binomial. And they interact with each other through multiplication. So when we have a binomial times a binomial, we use FOIL. FOIL. So FOIL refers to, said it earlier, first, outside, inside, last. So I don't really like to do this. I feel like getting hung up on the name is annoying, but I still have to call it the FOIL method because that's what it's called. That's how people remember it. So let's get right into this. So when multiplying a binomial times a binomial, you want to take one of the terms in the first binomial, multiply it by both terms in the second binomial. So 6x times 4x is 24, right? Now, they both have base x, so we have to add the powers when we multiply them together. Power of 1, power of 1. So 1 plus 1, 2. So we have 24x squared. Next, we want to take our 6x and multiply it by the other term in the binomial, the last term. See how I'm not following the direct first, outside, inside, last acronym, but still, we're getting there, right? So 6x times a 4x. Great. Now, we have a positive times a positive, 6x times 1. So that's plus 6x. Now we're done with the 6x. Once we've multiplied it by the first term in the other binomial and then the last term in the other binomial, we're done with it. We don't need it anymore. So we have this expression now, and always remember, you should end off with 4 terms after you do FOIL. So if you don't end off with 4 terms and you didn't collect them at some point, you definitely did it wrong. You just go look back and redo it. Right, so now we're done with the 6x. We move on to 1. All right, so we do the same thing with 1. We multiply it by both terms in the other binomial, right? So 1 times 4x is 4x. 1 times 1 is 1. All right, so now we do something we learned in the other videos. We collect like terms, and then we're finished the problem. Is there anything like with x squared here, this x squared here term? No, so we just leave it. But you know what there is? There's another x term, isn't there? 6 plus 4x, we can add those together. 6 plus 4 is 10, so this is 10x. And then we just have a 1 at the end here. Amazing. All right, on to the second example. So let's go through our little checklist here. What is FOIL? When do we use FOIL? Well, FOIL refers to the acronym first, outside, inside, last, and it just tells you what to do when you multiply two binomials together. So we have to figure out, okay, are we given two binomials multiplied together? So this is two terms, so that's a binomial. Okay, they're interacting through multiplication. Okay, this is two terms as well. Okay, so we're given two binomials multiplied together, so we can use FOIL. So let's start with the first term, 8x. 8x times 4x. 8 times 4. Sorry. 8 times 4, 32. And we see that they are like, and that they have, the same base here. So given that they have the same base and we're multiplying them together, we have to add the exponents. And they both have an exponent of 1. Even though we don't denote it with 1, we assume that it's 1 because we know that x to the 0 is actually just 1, right? If I said 8x to the 0, that would be 8 times 1. And you can verify that in your calculator. So this is 32x squared. Now we move on to the next term. We have 8x times negative 2. Positive times negative is negative. Negative overpowers it, right? 8x times negative 2, that's a negative 16x. Now we're done with 8x. Great, we move on to the next term in the first binomial, negative 1. Negative 1 times 4x, that's a negative times a positive, so we have a negative 4x, and now we have negative 1 times negative 2. Whoa, negative times negative. Now let's remember back from the first video. Does that equal a positive or a negative? A negative times a negative always equals a positive. Just like if you divide two negatives, that's always going to equal positive as well. So, negative 1 times a negative 2, we get positive 2. And that's it. We actually have to collect these like terms, and then that's it. So, 32x squared, and then we have a negative 16 and a negative 4. Let's think back to the video before. How do we add together two negatives? Together, we have negative 20 now. So, our next term is 2, and we just leave that because there's no like terms. And that's it. And that's how you do the FOIL method. Pretty easy, right? Just a binomial times a binomial. And then we can use FOIL. And then you multiply the first term by all the terms in the other binomial. And then you do the second term and you multiply it by all the terms in the other binomial. And you collect like terms. Pretty simple. Thank you for watching. Be sure to click on my other videos that will help you during your journey through algebra. Have a great rest of your day.